Hi everyone, thanks for joining this month's bioCADDIE external webinar. If I could please remind all attendees to make sure that your microphones are muted unless you're going to be asking a question during the talk. So today we have a presentation by Dr. Alisa Surkis and Kevin Reed. Dr. Surkis is the head of the data services and is a translational science librarian. And the Data Services Unit provides support for research data management and data visualization. It maintains an institutional data catalog and serves as the locus for education on collecting, managing, analyzing, and visualizing and sharing data. In her role as the Translational Science Librarian, Dr. Surkis is the Director of Team Science for the NYU HHC CTSI, and works to facilitate research collaboration. And Kevin Reed, our other presenter, is the Assistant Curator at the NYU School of Medicine. He's also the lead of the NYU Data Catalog Project, which is an index of data sets generated by NYU researchers and local experts for large publicly available and licensed data sets. He also provides data management training to students, faculty, and staff, and teaches a data-focused graduate course for first-year basic science MD PhD students. He also works collaboratively with his institution's Clinical Data Management Core and Research IT department to provide clinical data management and REDCap training through the Medical Center. So Dr. Surkis and Kevin, please feel free to get started.
Sure. So hi everyone. This is Kevin speaking. I'm here with my colleague Alisa. And today the plan is to talk to you about what we've been doing for the past 2 years to prepare medical librarians to understand and teach research data management at our institution. Not only at our institution, but to medical librarians across the U.S. So just to give you some background on this project, this is funded by the NIH P2K initiative on research education, specifically around building curriculum modules that can be used by librarians and other information specialists to prepare researchers, graduate students, and research. This effort is a collaboration with the NYU Health Sciences Library and our Institute of Innovations in Medical Education. We've used the Institute to help us with instructional design and evaluation and assessment of this entire process. Just a reminder for everyone to please mute their phones as they come onto the call. Thank you. So before we even started this project, we sent out a quick survey to the Health Sciences Library community to ask if they saw a role for their library in teaching research data management. And 90 people said yes, they definitely do see a role for their own library in doing this kind of work. However, when we asked them if they currently teach research data management at their institution, 80 people said that they did not. So this really sort of gave us an example of a need that we could fulfill in providing this kind of training to health sciences librarians across the U.S. So in terms of our own experience, we have been providing continuing education classes for medical librarians since 2014. And also within our own institution, we provide a variety of classes to different kinds of researchers within our institution. We also teach a first-year graduate course that provides data management support to basic science students. And we also have experience building videos, one of them being the data management and sharing snafu in 3 short acts, which has been shared fairly widely across the research community. So in terms of our approach for this particular grant, we took a 2-pronged approach and a train-the-trainer approach. First was, our goal was to provide online librarian training for health sciences librarians, and then to provide those librarians with teaching toolkits and teaching material that they can then use to teach researchers. And then using all of the feedback we received to improve all that material and disseminate it to the biomedical library community more broadly. In terms of our general approach, we felt that it was important to provide the basis in the understanding of research data management best practices to health sciences librarians, but what was almost equally as important was understanding that research context and how different kinds of researchers face different issues when dealing with research data management practices. In terms of our online librarian training, we provided a web-based curriculum that focused on the practice of research, explaining the story of data from different perspectives, and then working on the fundamentals of research data management. Our goal and the way we've disseminated this material is through the Compass Learning System, which is a homegrown system through NYU that anyone can use. So you can simply create an account and go through all of our modules that you'd like to use. So once we started with the online librarian training, our focus was on piloting this material with a cohort of medical librarians, looking at getting a wide range of people with different teaching experience, different levels of understanding of research data management and training to have them take these online modules. And from there, we provided a level of librarian evaluation that we were looking for to see how much of a knowledge gain they received from taking our modules and their satisfaction with the material overall. We then wanted to evaluate their comfort level and intent to teach the material now that they had taken our modules. And then we also did qualitative follow-up with those librarians to make sure that we were getting more information about the value of the material and how it can be improved. From there, we wanted to provide librarians with material to teach researchers. So what we did was provide them with slides and script that they could use to teach a 1-hour research data management introductory course to researchers, to provide evaluation material so they could evaluate the actual course, to find out who was taking the course and what they would use in the practice of their own research, and then also provide them with some of those edutainment videos that I talked about earlier that they would be able to use to also engage the research community at their own institution. From there, we wanted to pilot this material by actually attending or visiting other institutions and observing librarians teach our material to the researchers, and then conduct follow-up interviews with the librarians to see how they felt the material worked for them and for their own research communities. And then finally, we also wanted to evaluate the researchers. So we wanted to assess the knowledge they gained from taking the course, the satisfaction with the material that they took, and then also their intent to practice. What did they actually get from the material that they're going to take away and implement in their own research and their own work? From there, our goal was to provide a 6-month follow-up for the librarians after they've taken our modules. Did they have an intent to teach, and did they actually teach? For the researchers who took the in-person content, did they have an intent to use, and did that actually change the way they do research data management in their own labs and in their own research? That was the main focus for us. So to go into the different online modules, just briefly to give you a sense of what we were pitching and what we were providing in terms of training material. The first module focused on the story of data, and this was really just to contextualize for librarians the idea of what kind of data we're talking about, and in which we're talking about research data management. Again, please mute your phones if you can, if you haven't done so already. The second module was about the data lifecycle. Specifically, we wanted to focus on the data lifecycle from the perspective of disseminating research data, not just the findings of research in the form of a publication or a presentation or a poster. And this lifecycle also highlighted the idea of data reuse and reproducibility. So we wanted to, again, emphasize the importance of making sure that the methods and what was used to collect, create, and assemble the research data was also being taken into account for the purposes of research data management. As I mentioned before, we really wanted to focus on the idea of understanding the research climate and the researchers who are working in research data management. So for that, we focused on the difference between bench science researchers and clinical researchers, how they speak different languages, how they interact with data differently, and how they interact with each other differently over the course of research to provide that much needed context. We also wanted to include for Module 4 the idea of the research data management climate. So all the different kinds of policies and requirements that have been released to help them understand the landscape of data management and data sharing and rigor and reproducibility across the landscape over the past few years, as well as highlight some of the new publisher policies that are now mandating different types of data sharing requirements as well. In Module 5, we focused on research data management best practices, so understanding a checklist type of idea in terms of creating documentation, file structures, and data dictionaries to help people manage their data more effectively. And then the idea of standards and understanding what's the value of standards in terms of standardizing data collection and promoting interoperability of data across different disciplines and across different researchers. But also we wanted to highlight some of the issues in terms of the fact that there are no real standard for standards for health sciences librarians. So they understood the landscape around standards, and also to promote some of the tools that are available like the NLM common data elements and biosharing.org, so they knew where they could go to identify standards like this. In Module 7, we focused on the idea of storage, preservation, and sharing to give people an idea of the best places and the best ways to store their data, and how storing their data does not mean that they're preserving it. We also highlighted different formats people could use to preserve their data and proper workflows for doing so, as well as giving them avenues for sharing data as well. So we started out with 7 modules, but after we received a number of useful feedback about the modules, we found that librarians found this information useful, but also wanted a module on actually getting started and identifying partnerships that could help them teach research data management in their own institution. What we've done is provide material and a short video that describes how different people and what's worked for us at our own institution in reaching out to teach research data management and getting started with data services at our own institution.
Hi, this is Alisa, and I'm going to talk about some of the data that we collected, evaluation data in the piloting. So we collected several types of evaluation data, data that spoke to people's satisfaction with the modules, how much they had their understanding of the topic changed from the beginning to the end of a particular module, and what their change in the comfort level with the overall material was across all of the modules. And we also had some free text fields that allowed people to kind of give us more qualitative feedback. So in terms of the satisfaction data, this is for each of, it's just for the 7 modules since the 8th module was added later. This asks for the learners to rate the effectiveness of the presentation, and you can see across all the 7 modules, the vast majority rated them either mostly or very effective. Learner, to what degree they would recommend the modules. Again, the vast majority would either recommend or highly recommend. The rating of if the level of the module was appropriate. Again, this overwhelmingly that the level was right, and this is the length. So again, overwhelmingly that the length of the module was right. So there were qualitative comments, and we did make some changes, some improvements we hope to the modules afterwards. But even from the baseline, we felt that in terms of user satisfaction with the modules, we were in pretty good shape. But then the big question, were we helping people gain understanding? I'm going to go through each modules, but basically it was pretty similar across the modules. There were only a handful of people who identified themselves as having no understanding of the material before the module, but for 1 or 2 at most per module, and for each of those, we ended up, the number of learners that we piloted with was a total of 67, but only 29 made it through to the final module. So all of the people who said they initially had no understanding were raised up to a minimal level of understanding. Most of the people with a minimal level understanding ended up at a moderate level of understanding, and let's see if I can, it got to a moderate level of understanding. People who started out with a moderate level of understanding, there was less of a change there. So this is for the story of data module, but then if we go to the life cycle one, you can see a very similar pattern. In this case, about half the people who had a moderate level of understanding went to a strong understanding researchers. That was sort of the biggest change, pretty similar. RDM climate, very few people on the moderate understanding had any change. Best practices, I'm just going to kind of flow through these because as you can see, it's a very similar pattern from module to module. So, again, mostly to moderate, and a little less than half went to strong understanding. So this is taken across all of the modules. So again, the change from no understanding, everybody had a change of 1, which is they went from no understanding to minimal understanding. Who started at minimal understanding, again, on average, the average was that they went to about a moderate level of understanding, and then a much smaller change from moderate. So several reasons, I think, why we saw such a much smaller change from moderate understanding. One being that the total to finish all of these modules was about 3 hours. So we didn't, there was not a huge depth of material. The idea was to basically get people up and running in this sort of as quickly and painlessly as possible. So in that respect, we didn't want to, something that was 8 hours or days of training. We wanted something people could would have time to sort of fit into what their work. Another thing is because our scale was not so granular when we had follow-up phone interviews with some of the learners, even people with started out at moderate may not have changed, their designation, but at the same time they felt they had, with a scale of 4, we may not have moved to the next level. And then one of the qualitative comments we got, this was around the comfort, but they answered mostly comfortable, but that's just their personality. They didn't feel confident with new material, that they hadn't thoroughly researched all aspects of a subject. And in terms of librarian personalities, if there is such a thing, I think this one may not be atypical. So I think, we were dealing with a learner base that may have been more hesitant to identify a change from moderate to strong understanding. And this is a fairly similar graph. This is the change in the comfort level. So this was something we asked when people used all 7 modules, which was what was your comfort level initially, went up. And so who started out with no comfort level with research data management material ended up somewhat mostly. Same thing, somewhat went to mostly, not a lot of motion. This mirrored what we saw in the understanding of the modules for the most part. But then the big question, did they feel they had sufficient knowledge to teach research data management? 10 said no, 18 said yes. And this looks at the comfort level after the module versus before and breaks it down by the red dots that they felt they had sufficient knowledge to teach and the black not ready to teach. So even people who started out before the modules with no comfort level, a couple of them felt that they were at the point where they were ready to teach. Even if they started out with a relatively low level, somewhat comfortable, most of those people ended the modules feeling that they could teach, and then for the mostly and very almost all but one. And then another question we asked was whether teaching or not, what would they make use of this of the material that they had learned, and that was overwhelmingly that people said they would make use of this material. So this was another benefit of the modules outside of just getting people ready to teach a specific class. So in terms of the in-person pilot, so as Kevin said, we visited pilot institutions to observe teaching the material. A big challenge, when we initially identified 10 people more or less who seemed to be good candidates for an in-person pilot. Over time, institutional priorities changed, timelines were lengthened, people left institutions, and we found that it really was very challenging to get people who actually were able to get a course out there. So we have done 3 pilots. So the numbers are not huge, but I'm going to talk about the evaluation data we did with the researchers who attended those pilot teachings. And there's 10 people in that cohort. That's 10 people that consented. The class sizes were from 1 person to about 10 people at one institution. So we had about 15 people overall, but 10 researchers who consented to use their data. So in terms of the researcher satisfaction with the material that was presented to them by our pilot participants, overall a high level of satisfaction, the level, the length, the effectiveness, and the recommendation all were very good. One thing we asked was if the researchers or the people who attended these trainings had any previous training in research data management. So out of the 10, none of them had had any previous training. And, obviously this training is out there, it's available online, it's available, but until there was somebody at their institution who said, I'm teaching a class on this day and this time, they didn't avail themselves of it. And then when we asked them if they would use the knowledge gained, 3 said they probably would, and 7 said they definitely would. So our take-home from the pilot, again, the data is not as much data as we had hoped, but the take-home really was that this did work in terms of, the people taking the modules, taking that teaching toolkit, teaching it at their own institution. It hit audiences that had not previously been exposed to this material, and they walked away feeling like they were going to use this. The script is helpful but dangerous. So in terms of what we observed, people varied a lot in terms of to what extent they made the script their own. We thought about just giving people kind of bullet points and letting them kind of put it in their own words, but what we ended up going with the script, which sort of gave them how we would say things, the full context, you know, and encourage people to make it in their own voice, to customize it however they wanted to. But I think people didn't, the pilot participants that we observed some did it to a more or less a degree, and all had plans to customize it more in the future. But I think that even though there's a danger to the script in that people kind of are speaking not in their own voice, so they're not as comfortable as they would be in another teaching situation, it allowed them to make that leap and get the course out there. And again, to you know, once you do it once, then you see the way that you would do things differently. And in each of the institutions, there were plans or requests for future classes, some of which came out of the class that they taught, that we observed. So, next steps.
So as for our next steps, the grant is coming to a close relatively soon. But what we've done with the online modules is originally we required for the pilot that all of the modules were taken in succession so we could see the progress of people who use the modules from the beginning to end. So now what we have done is decoupled all of the modules so anyone can take any module that they'd like at any time. We've removed all of the satisfaction surveys from the modules, so now we just have an introductory survey asking what they are using research data management for and if they'd be willing to be contacted by us. And what we're hoping is that medical librarians will use this material and also follow up with us so that we can, again, continually improve this material, make it useful for our community as much as we possibly can. Similarly, we've made the teaching toolkit for librarians available. Now we also plan to keep this updated as new requirements come out and as new material is created. And this includes slides for a 1 to 1.5 hour class. We also have evaluation materials for this work, as well as instructions on how to set this up and how to get this material out. Yeah, so it's also, this is currently available on Figshare. The link is up on the right-hand side, so please use it if you find it useful for yourself, as we want as many people to use it as possible, and again, also to reach out to us so that we can improve this material and establish new collaborations with our community.
And the modules in the toolkit are now, we have a grant from the Middle Atlantic region of the National Network of Libraries of Medicine to do a pilot of sort of a broader program. The point of the modules in the toolkit was really aimed very sort of narrowly at getting people up and running, teaching a 60 to 90 minute research data management introduction class for researchers at their institutions. This is a broader pilot to help health sciences libraries get research data management services up and running more broadly. So it includes the modules, the teaching toolkit, as well as template and guidance for doing interviews with researchers at one's own institution, and putting together a series of data classes as a collaboration with people doing data work across an institution as a way to sort of jumpstart a library's involvement in and degree to which people see them as providing data services.
So our main goal with this whole process obviously is to help train the health sciences library community to provide research data management support at their own institutions, but we're also hoping to establish a community that is going to identify new challenges and new opportunities around supporting research data at institutions and in hospitals so that we can work together to find solutions to those problems and to build a growing community out that can help support this kind of work in the future. So that's our program for today. We are open to questions and suggestions and feedback. Happy to hear anything that we can and answer questions. Thank you.
The conference has been unmuted.
I see. Now they're, okay. Can you put the links to the material again on the screen? So I can do that. I'll put that up there now.
Yeah, that's the link for the teaching toolkit, and then it's RDM_teaching toolkit, and then there's also the link for the modules, which is RDM_modules.
Okay, so Vladimir asked, how do you adapt the models for specific RDM apps like REDCap? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. I think we have been careful to not promote specific apps that may be for the modules that may not be available at all institutions. Again, we want this to be available and applicable to everyone. So while we at NYU have a REDCap instance, we didn't want to promote that as a way to manage data, even though we think it's valuable, because there are many institutions who do not have their own REDCap instance at their own institution. So in terms of the videos that we created for our material, we used Adobe, I'm pretty sure, to do it. Catherine Larson was responsible for that.
And then there was another.
And we used another tool called GoAnimate, which was for some of the smaller modules later on. So it was a mixture of Camtasia and Adobe for the main modules, and then a few other with GoAnimate. So, but we're happy to share those with you if you'd like, and you can follow up with us at the end of the presentation and share that information with you.
Any other questions?
We'll give another minute for questions, and if not, I guess we can end the meeting, or Elizabeth, you can. Oh.
Kevin, this is Lisa Lang from the National Library of Medicine. Thank you for this. Very interesting. Can you say something about this in the context of other materials that are being developed by other libraries that receive funding or to develop toolkits or educational materials in the context of BD2K? I thought there were other
there are others
too.
There was one. UMass has a MOOC that they're developing, but I think they have not yet started piloting. So, I mean, you know, I think there were several of these grants to libraries. I think that they are, you know, I don't know to what extent they are similar. I think that essentially ours was fairly narrowly focused, and again had sort of this train the trainer. So I think that they were all. Some varied in content and some varied in form, but I think that they were sort of all different approaches that brought different things to the table.
Yeah, and I would say I think one of the things we tried to focus on is we've seen a lot of research data management education material out there that focuses and relies heavily on things like the DMP, like a data management plan, but we really wanted to focus specifically on biomedical research to make sure that we had that context and we were providing that to our health sciences library community.
And there was a question from Vladimir about, are you open to have modules under version control for customizing, forking, etc.? Right now, these modules are hosted on this homegrown system, as Kevin said, and we don't really have that degree of control over it. So we are open to sharing the material and letting people use it and customizing it in whatever way possible, but we don't have a very kind of neat way to wrap up the modules and allow people to do that currently. But if he has any thoughts on that, we would love to hear them.
Yeah, we have been pursuing other platforms. We just haven't found one that is suitable for our needs, especially around collecting data. So Vladimir, if you have any ideas around that, that would be really helpful for us.
Kate asked, do you see RDM workshops as best delivered to researchers from a single domain, lab, department, or everyone you can get to show up at the library? I think at an introductory level, we've generally done sort of a broad blast and have a variety of people in there. Certainly, if you break out kind of clinical from bench science researchers, you can, particularly for clinical, you can get into sort of things that are more specific to their research. And then in terms of specific labs or departments, I think that would be really great if you can do that. I don't know how much more in-depth you would necessarily get in terms of the material you would deliver, but I think if you were within a specific lab, you might kind of get to specific problems that you could address. So the times when we've worked with specific groups, it's not that we're delivering different material, it's that there's more kind of back and forth around how to address their specific problems.
This is Ellen Warner at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, and I'm wondering, I was able to get to that bit.ly, the modules. Is it possible for us at NIH to use for internal educational purposes only your slide set from today? Is that available? Because I can email you if you would be willing to do that. Yeah, thank you. I have a presentation next week to the Institute Director, and I think some things that you provided were a unique perspective that we haven't really considered here before.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, we're happy to those. Or are they downloaded? I don't know. I think they're going to be available on the bioCADDIE site, but we'll send them to you directly after anyways, as long as you send out an email, Ellen. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I've got your emails, Kevin and Alisa. Thank you.
Okay. Molly asked about the in-person pilots and if the researchers had prior knowledge of RDM. I believe they all had some prior knowledge. We did ask about that in a survey of everybody before the modules. Did they have prior training, and what was the nature of that training? And are you asking how they learned about, if you're asking how they learned about the pilot, we did a lot of outreach through the National Networks of Libraries of Medicine.
And JB, you said, how about Moodle for a platform? I have been looking at Moodle as an option, and I think because it is open source, it might be the most reliable place to put it, and I think that is something I'm looking into, but we haven't gotten that far yet. And the slides are CC BY.
These particular slides, we don't think we've decided to create a commons to the slides in particular.
Yeah, we don't have any Creative Commons to these slides currently, but you can use them as you wish.
We should. Did we?
That's for the Moodle.
Okay, we have. NIH. Okay, that's the. Okay.
Okay.
All right. See, did we get all of the questions? I think we got all the questions. If we missed anybody, if there's any other questions, let us know.
And how long at this point, is it your expectation that you'll be keeping both the toolkit and the modules up? I mean, this is Lisa Lang, and I was able to give a password and get myself in, and I can now see what you've got. But how much of this is going to stay up for how long?
It is all going to stay up.
Indefinitely?
Indefinitely. That's a better word than forever. Yes, so we don't have an intent to take them down. They may change platforms, particularly the modules, but yeah, the idea is that these will stay available and that we will update them.
Yeah, so Kate asked a great question about having a platform for sharing customizations. What we're hoping to get out of the National Network grant with the Mid-Atlantic region is to start that community, to get people to provide feedback and for us to start improving the modules. There's also now a data SIG, a special interest group through the Medical Library Association. There were over 40 members who attended at the conference, the special interest meeting there, and we're hoping that we'll also be able to use them to build this community out and to help us improve the material and make it applicable and find out what all those customizations are and what works well and what doesn't for what community. So absolutely, we are hoping to use those two as a beginning way to start a community to improve these resources for everyone.
And that's really sort of a core part of what we want to do here. It's written into our grant, and it's I think key to moving this forward and spreading the word about this.
It's as I said, it's one thing to provide people with the tools to learn, but we really want to continue to build these tools and also use other libraries to identify new challenges and new issues around data that the health sciences libraries can support and who they can partner with. And it's really just hopefully building the field out to provide more support in that area overall. And Nina, yes, we'll be sharing the slides with attendees. I think it goes up as well. Thanks, Kate. Just give another minute for, there we go. Thank you,
great.
Elizabeth.
Okay.
We'll give another minute for questions if anyone has them. You're also welcome to contact us at any time for further questions, or if you're interested in using the material and you're not sure how to get started, we're here to support and help.
Thank you for all the thanks. So.
I think that's probably the last of the questions. So thanks so much, everybody, for attending. Any further questions, anything, again, please feel free to contact us. We are happy to chat further.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.